Okay, hold it.
Standing before you today, I bet you wouldn't guess I have 6 kids. I know, I look pretty good for my age. Being a mom has all sorts of challenges, but I deal with issues that are a bit more pressing than most mothers. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I've passed it on to my children. That's what I'm going to talk to you today about. During this presentation, I'm going to explain what Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is, the struggles my kids and I face, and the discrimination that's still going on in the disabled community today. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a rare connective tissue disease that only 1 in every 100,000 people are affected with, and I am one of the lucky few. Medlineplus.gov states that the symptoms of EDS range from mildly loose joints to life-threatening complications. I've come to discover that I'm more on the former end of the spectrum, while my daughter Salem fits into the latter. Actually, almost her entire life, she was presumed healthy. It wasn't until her 16th birthday, shortly after her growth plate shut, that her health plummeted. Everything happened so fast. One day she was perfectly able-bodied, but by the next week she couldn't even sit up on her own. It was so hard to watch. She was constantly being poked by countless needles and scanned by so many machines that I'm sure her bones were nothing short of radioactive, but all the tests came back negative. It wasn't until we saw a genetic specialist who tested her using the Baton score that we got an official diagnosis. We have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. The Joint Hypermobility Handbook, written by Brad Tinkle, describes the Baton score as an exam used to test the severity of the hypermobility type of EDS. Patients can rank on a scale of 1 to 9, and anything rated above a 4 is considered serious. When we got our results back, I got a 5. My daughter, a 9. The most severe case of type 3 EDS possible. I can't explain the way I felt other than guilty. How could I have not noticed something was wrong earlier? Looking back, all of her previous health issues can be tied to EDS. If I would have known how serious it was, I wouldn't have returned sports. While there is no cure, I could have taken different preventative measures had I known. Next, we'll dive into how it affects my daughter's day-to-day life. The hypermobility type primarily targets the joints, causing extreme hypertension and frequent dislocations. When a joint dislocates, it grinds against the neighboring bone, causing slow and painful deterioration. She has approximately 60 dislocations every day. EDS is also known to weaken the skin and connective tissue, causing intense wounds and bruises. This makes us completely vulnerable to infections and constant sickness. The most serious complications that come with diagnosis are internal. The vascular aspect of EDS devours organs. The uterus, intestines, aorta, stomach, and all arteries suffer until they are either too weak to function or rupture altogether. My daughter's body is so much more than the textbook symptoms, though. Regardless of what the Wikipedia page says, this disease is not just mere bruises and flexibility. This disease is waking up in the middle of the night crying because her muscles have betrayed her to the point where she can't move at all. It's having to help my 20-year-old daughter get in and out of the bed when it's all too much for her joints to handle. It's watching my daughter sleep more than she's awake because it's the only way to escape the reality of her situation. It's watching her fall into a deep depression and knowing there's nothing I can do to save her. The final point I want to bring to your attention is the amount of discrimination disabled people face today. Obviously, my daughter has her fair share of struggles, but people still go out of their way to make it known that they don't view her disability as valid. Most days, she is able to walk on her own without the use of her cane or wheelchair for short periods of time. However, she does still need to use the disabled parking when out in public. She has stopped and asked intrusive questions almost every time she parks. Unfortunately, she's not the only one. This is a shared experience amongst people with invisible disabilities. We've learned to ignore the constant staring from ignorant people who don't understand how rare diseases work because of the thing about EDS is, and it's not a broken leg. When she's in her wheelchair, the disgusted glares she receives once she stands and starts walking never get any easier to deal with. There is no cast that proves that she's disabled, and it's always obvious that people are looking for one. Sometimes I want to tell them that maybe they should wrap a cast around their head because it must be broken if their mind cannot grasp the concept of pain that can be felt but not seen. This type of discrimination is not only evident in social situations, but also in the face of employment. A report from Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services shows that 41% of those aged 21 to 64 with any disability were employed, compared with 79% of those with no disability. That is a 38% difference. My daughter is constantly unemployed because it's nearly impossible to find a job that is willing to make reasonable accommodations to have her as an employee. So yeah, I do look good, but so does my daughter. Keep in mind that what you see on the surface is not always the truth. In conclusion, I hope you learned something today. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a concept most specialists still cannot comprehend, and I'm not asking you to. All I want is for you to educate yourself on the issues amongst the disabled community today, because ignorance is a disease even worse than my own.